Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about the Phoenix Suns because I think they're one of the more interesting teams as we go forward, 2 weeks away now, less than 2 weeks away from the start of the NBA season, which is a crazy thing to think about. But Phoenix is a team that I want to talk about because there's a lot of different scenarios in which, their season can follow. And this is going to be a different style of video because I'm going to be talking about some things that could happen to them this season that aren't necessarily my opinion, but we're kind of just talking out the worst case scenario. That's what I wanted to do in today's video. But quickly, little promo here. I know a lot of you guys were excited for the NBA season preview series to continue over here on YouTube. I've decided to move that to a different platform. You can see those either on TikTok or on Instagram. The links are down in the description. You can check out the link tree, or maybe I'll show them on screen here. That's just a better platform for that type of content, if I'm honest. It just makes more sense for those videos to be shorter and to be all put together in one place. I'll still do a full East and West, full season preview, give predictions on who I think is going to win the title, who I think is going to make the conference finals, stuff like that. But for individual teams, you can check out those platforms. With those things said, typical stuff, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and let's go ahead and get started. So the Phoenix Suns. This is a really, really interesting group that I'm honestly excited about. They made some good moves in the offseason. They brought in someone like CP3 that gives them credibility and makes them a way more legitimate playoff candidate, in my opinion. They've got pieces around Devin Booker that should fit well. Not only Chris Paul, but DeAndre Ayton should continue to improve. They've got wings that can defend and can shoot. And it just looks like a really solid group, and one of the most solid groups that Phoenix has had and has put together in recent years here. And it became clear in the bubble, in that run of success that they had, that if you put proper complementary pieces around Devin Booker, he can win you some basketball games and he can drive winning for your team, which was a question mark, to be completely honest, for him in the past. But again, it was made clear in the bubble that as long as he has the correct pieces around him, he can be a really good player and can drive winning, as we saw in the bubble. Now, the other part to consider about this is the fact that Chris Paul is now in Phoenix. And this is a guy that, you want to talk about driving winning, Chris Paul has been a player that has driven winning throughout his career. He hasn't missed the playoffs since like the 2006-2007 season when he was 21 years old on a Hornets team with David West and Peja Stojakovic. Like, Chris Paul makes the playoffs. Chris Paul drives winning on his teams. Maybe guys don't love playing with him. Maybe it's not a style that everybody loves watching or loves participating in, but Chris Paul is going to help you win basketball games. And that is a huge, again, boost to the legitimacy of this Phoenix Suns team. And I think that's a huge, huge deal. However, let's get to kind of the whole point of the video here. And the question here is basically, are we sure that Phoenix is that good? Are we sure that what we're hoping for out of this team this season is legit? Let's talk about why that might be the case. Yes, they had an awesome stretch in the bubble, and they obviously didn't lose any games, didn't end up making the playoffs, which was kind of a weird scenario. But then they were able to build on that with their offseason moves. And it seems like there's this momentum behind this team that is pushing them towards making the playoffs potentially this year, right? But that's such a small sample size to go off of to say all of a sudden that the Suns are a legitimate team. We have so much other stuff in the past that points us in the direction of that simply not being the case, because Devin Booker, even though there are a lot of promising signs coming out of the bubble about just surrounding him with the proper players and he'll be good, his career high for wins in his career before last season, that was obviously a very weird year. The most wins that Devin Booker had in his NBA career in Phoenix was 24 before last year. And so it's a bit of a leap, in my opinion, to suddenly go from this is one of the worst franchises in the league, they perpetually are an underperforming, losing franchise, to now going from that to they won some games in the bubble, they brought in Chris Paul, now they're going to be a postseason team. And let's talk about Chris Paul too. This is a guy that had an awesome season last year, right? And really turned around a lot of the narratives that had started to kind of develop around Chris Paul prior to that. But let's not remember that in the season before, it absolutely looked like Chris Paul lost a step. And maybe he wasn't healthy, maybe age was catching up to him. I know that he changed some things in his diet, his workout routine, and things like that, and looked awesome last year. But the fact is, he's 35 years old. He's a guy that, has had injury issues at bad times in his career. And there's a lot of expectations this year in Phoenix. And if he isn't healthy, it's going to be difficult for them to reach those expectations and meet those expectations that a lot of people have placed on them. And so when you combine all those things together, their case as a potential playoff team looks even more shaky, without considering the fact that it's not just Devin Booker, it's not just Chris Paul. They're going to be relying on a lot of other unproven players on this roster. Guys like DeAndre Ayton, we don't know if he's going to take a step forward. We don't know if he's going to develop into a player that was worthy of being selected with the #1 overall pick a few years ago. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Javon Carter. I like Jay Crowder, Dario Saric. Like, these are the players that we're going to be counting on there in Phoenix to push this team past just being the Devin Booker and Chris Paul show, which I'm not sure if just being the Devin Booker and Chris Paul show is going to be enough. And a Western Conference that, as I continue to say in almost every single video when I'm talking about a Western Conference team, is incredibly tough. I think every single team in this conference, if they were on the other side, if they were in the East, would have a legitimate case to be a top 8 team in the Eastern Conference. Now, they're not all going to be top 8 teams in the West, obviously, but they are really, really good. And it might be the deepest Western or Eastern Conference that we've seen ever. So all those things combined, it makes it pretty difficult to see how this is going to go extremely well for Phoenix. So let's talk about that worst case scenario here. Well, it would be that the whole thing just doesn't work, right? Chris Paul gets hurt and he's just ineffective and annoying, and it bothers Devin Booker, it bothers DeAndre Ayton, it bothers all these young guys that don't really know what it takes to be successful in the NBA. Chris Paul tries to bring those things, but he's hurt, can't help them on the floor. Devin Booker comes into this season with high expectations, and when they don't meet those expectations, he gets even more upset than he would have been otherwise, because now he's actually, expecting this team to make the playoffs. DeAndre Ayton does not take a step forward, which creates an even weirder dynamic because they need to make a decision on an extension for him relatively soon here coming up. The younger guys don't step up. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges don't have good seasons. Jay Crowder is just kind of Dario Saric is just kind of and they win like 30 games and they don't compete for a playoff spot. And then they go into next season, they're looking at an unhappy Devin Booker. They don't know what they have in DeAndre Ayton, who would have 1 year left on his contract at that point. They need to figure out what to do with an extension for him. Chris Paul will be making $44 million next year, assuming he opts into his player option. He might not be incredibly happy in a situation in which he just missed the playoffs for the first time since 2007. And everything just gets really, really awkward really, really quickly there in Phoenix. That's the worst case scenario. And when you really think about all the evidence that we have for this team right now, it isn't an unlikely scenario that those kinds of things happen. Again, we're counting on a player in Devin Booker that has only ever led his team to 24 wins in the regular season outside of whatever the heck happened last year, because that was just a really strange season. You're counting on a 35-year-old point guard that you just traded core rotation pieces and a 2022 first-round pick for, and you're counting on a guy that's a former #1 overall pick, yes, but was also picked in front of someone that he absolutely shouldn't have been in Luka Doncic, and that continues to hang over a lot of people, a lot of players in this draft class and a lot of front offices around the league. So if DeAndre Ayton doesn't step up, if Devin Booker doesn't continue his bubble success, if Chris Paul gets hurt, there's no reason to think that this Phoenix Suns team is going to be successful. Now, with that worst case scenario laid out, do I think that's what's going to happen? No, probably not. The injury stuff for Chris Paul absolutely worries me. The small sample size of, going off of just a handful of games in the bubble and now projecting this team to be a playoff team in the West, yes, that would concern me. Just going off of that small little sample size of games and then suddenly making this leap that Phoenix is going to be a legitimate team in the Western Conference, that would concern me. However, I think that the Suns are going to be good. I don't think they're going to be like top 5 seed good, but I think that they're going to push for the playoffs. I think they will likely be a playoff team in a very tough Western Conference. And then we'll kind of go from there and we'll see if they're able to progress any further than that. It's all going to depend on the health of Chris Paul, on how him and Devin Booker mesh together, on how the complementary guys play. And as I've said in I think 3 or 4 Phoenix Suns videos in the past, the future and the ceiling of this team is all going to depend on DeAndre Ayton, because he has the talent of a guy that can be an all-star and all-NBA caliber big man. Now, is he going to put that talent together? Is he going to be good on both ends of the floor? Is he going to be an efficient big man that scores around the rim, provides them a bit of a post presence rather than someone that floats around and shoots elbow jump shots all day? I have no idea the answer to that question, but if he is able to fulfill the promise that he does have as a former #1 overall pick, as one of the more talented young big men in the league, and Chris Paul stays healthy, and Devin Booker continues to drive winning with good complementary players around him, the Suns are going to be good. If none of those are the case, though, there is a worst case scenario here that exists where Devin Booker is unhappy a year from now. Chris Paul is making a ton of money next year. You don't know what you're going to do with DeAndre Ayton. You don't have your 2022 first round pick. And suddenly the sky kind of looks like it's falling there in Phoenix. Now, a lot of teams have worst case scenarios, and maybe the Suns one isn't all that likely in comparison to some of those other teams. But when you look at a team that just gave up the pieces that they did in the Chris Paul trade, it makes things a little bit scary. Again, not necessarily my opinion on what's going to happen, but there's kind of your worst case scenario potentially here for Phoenix. If you have other teams you want me to talk about their potential worst case scenario, then leave those down in the comment section below, and I will absolutely do that. As I said at the beginning of the video, check out Instagram and TikTok for those season preview videos. I'll be pushing out content on all kinds of different platforms, not just YouTube here moving forward. I really want to give you guys as much content as I can on platforms on which it is appropriate. So be sure to check out not only Instagram and TikTok, but also just the link tree down below. You guys can see all the other stuff that I'm working on as well. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.